I am coming back to you with another story from Scandinavia and again Sweden. I guess that's the most covered place in relation with the UFOs. So let me tell you about this story. The place, what happened there and what happened to the victim, still unexplained up to nowadays. So let's just dive into the story. The story will bring us to a small Swedish village called Bisberg. And it was December 31st, 1987, around 1 a.m. in the morning. And it was like 24 hours before the real New Year celebrations could start in the surrounding area. But what happened to a particular married couple was simply mind-blowing and even left some evidence on the clothes. Oh, I forgot the official part. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. If you're here, I guess you already know why you're here. And if you're a new one, hi, welcome. I suggest you subscribe. It will really help to grow my channel. And yeah, I mean, we're here pretty much a very curious community that looks into different, very interesting and mysterious cases. Karin and Rune Lagerstrand, that's the married couple, the main characters of today's story. On that night, they went to bed to sleep, as people normally do, and they were already a couple of hours asleep when their pets started to act weird. So they had a cat and a dog, and they started to make noises, asking to go out. All right, they let the pets out, but after a while, they asked to come in. And after they had come in, they're again anxious and making noises, and again asking to go out. Pet owners really know that. Like, it is frustrating when they're asking out during the night, but if your baby wants that, you just simply do that. But anyways, we must acknowledge that it's weird. So they go out and then they ask back to come in the house, and after a while they're again asking to go out, as if there is something that makes them scared but still keeping them curious. Collie Cinda was barking constantly and the cat was alerted, so the married couple, both of them tried to calm down the pets, but it didn't help. As I said, New Year's Eve was 24 hours away, so there were no fireworks yet, so this could not be the case. This continued until like 3 a.m. And then they decided enough is enough. Let's go out and just check ourselves what is happening there, what's the fuss about, because also they just wanted simply to sleep. Now, this was the last time when they let both of the pets outside, and Karin decided also to join them to see what's happening out there. But before she went out, she decided to take a peek outside the window. Maybe she will see something from the inside. Well, she thought that maybe she will see some kind of like wild animal visiting the yard or some strange dog, but she didn't see anything. What she recalled was that the sky was crystal clear and there was a crescent moon in the sky. But she wasn't there for the romantic views. Remember, she wanted to sleep and everyone was nervous in the house. And what she saw through the window and paid attention to was her dog, Collie Cinda. So Cinda was standing by a flagpole and she was kind of like frozen from fear and she was really shaky. The clock showed already 3:30 a.m. when Karin finally went out in the yard of her house. When I came out, I smelled a very strong smell of sulfur and started looking around to see where it came from. Then I saw an icy blue object shaped like a huge light bulb hanging at the height of some birches, maybe 500 meters from me. She described that the object looked like metallic blue and it had a light gray aura that also had some orange colored splashes in it. And she said that although this object was very shiny, it did not reflect the light on the trees. On that moment, Karin estimated as she felt that the object was around 6 to 8 meters the size. And also she said that she noticed that there's some kind of action happening at the lower part of this shining light bulb, if we can call it like that. At the bottom, there was a neck-shaped opening from which came lightning that resembled long spears. The spears were fired from the object all the time, one at a time. It seemed as if the lightning bolts were somehow hurled out and then pulled back into the orb. And then something really shocking happened. I mean, when I read this, oh my God, I got so scared. So then 59-year-old Karin, who was standing there in her own yard in a nightgown, just wearing a simple sweater, started to feel something on herself. She said that her jaws were locked and her whole body was covered in goosebumps. And let me tell you, this is not it. The creepiness It continues. She also said that she felt like there was something, as she said, sucked to her forehead above the left eye. Yeah, creepy. I was as if paralyzed. I couldn't call for help and I couldn't get out of there. It was terrible. I was so scared that I was completely destroyed. My husband had gone back to the bed and I couldn't call out to him. Oh my God, like poor lady. I can just imagine how she felt like, yeah, this is it. I'm dying right now from this, whatever this is happening. Crazy. And what happened next? Like 5 minutes passed. So she was in this state for like 5 minutes. And then this object started to move. First to one side, then downwards, and then disappeared. And what was left after it was still the sulfur smell that she smelled when she went out of her house. That was the moment when Karin again came back to her normal self, like she could move and more or less felt okay. But when she wanted to kind of move from the spot where she was standing, she felt like a very sharp pain in her back on the right shoulder blade. While all of this happened, husband Rune indeed was in the bedroom asleep. And what he recalled, though, is that while he was asleep, he kind of heard some kind of whirling sound that only a car could make. But, well, he was just too lazy to check out what is that, and he didn't want to leave his bed. So, Rune, you missed so much. Also, Rune added that although he was asleep, he recalled that the sleep was kind of heavy and it wasn't like a healthy sleep. He was like tossing around all the time. And you know, when you do that during the night, you quite often tend to check the clock, like what time is it? So he took his watch from his bed table and he noticed that the clock has stopped during the night. And yeah, guys, that's a thing that happens almost in all UFO related cases. Like devices and electronics, they stop or just simply break. Now, in total, Karin spent outside like 5 minutes or so, and then she came back into her house, into her kitchen. And she realized that all of her clothes, the sweater, the nightgown, and also the dog, Collie, remember, the dog was also there, the fur of the dog, all of it smelled like sulfur. Poor kitty was so scared that he ran away and came back home only after a while. I made a cup of coffee and took off the sweater that I had over my nightgown, but it wasn't until New Year's Day that we discovered there was a long burn mark on the back. I had also started getting strange tingling in my shoulder blade. So on the next morning, when Karin woke up, she asked her husband Rune to inspect her back because she had this strange pain or tingling feeling out there. So he inspected the back and he didn't find anything, which is kind of weird because a little bit later, like afterwards, out of nowhere, some kind of like a burn mark appeared on her back. Karin continued to complain about how she felt. She felt very bad. She had this very sensitive skin now and she was constantly suffering from severe headaches. And in fact, in some interviews, she said that the headaches continued for like 4 days after this event took place. And I am not talking here about New Year's hangover. She was really in pain and she felt really, really down. If you are like me, most probably you really want to know what happened to those pets, because whenever I watch a movie or listen to a story involving pets, I'm like, but is the dog okay? Is the cat okay? So here's the side note about the dog and the cat. When they came back at home, everything was all right. So on that night, Karin said that she gave some treats, petted them, calmed them down, and afterwards they just continued to live their normal life. That's just a side note for people like me. And now 4 days passed and as they said, the weird smell of sulfur was still lingering in the air and they could still feel it. But this was not it. With this, the story does not end because this starts a long battle for Karin's health. Karin suffered from several inflammations. She was constantly fatigued and sluggish. In fact, in 1988, she was urgently sent to a doctor because, I will read because it's really weird. She had to remove a loose bone fragment on her right leg. So the bone fragment was later removed and turned out to be calcified fatty tissue. You know what? I wish they had tested this calcified fatty tissue. Maybe, just maybe, this was some kind of implant. I know sounds crazy, but I wish someone would have tested the woman's health more carefully. After this alleged encounter, she would have been an interesting study object. Now, this was of course reported to the UFO Sweden, the organization that I'm quite often referring to when I'm telling you these stories. And after doing the research, they recalled, we picked up the jumper and could see that there was a 5-centimeter long mark at the back on the right side. That's the place where she had this pain afterwards. Thread loops were burned into a knot. We also called the healthcare manager in Soter, who came and measured the radioactivity on the jumper. But the test was negative. That was said by one of the investigators, Berit Bergqvist. So UFO Sweden also sent this jumper with this mark to Swedish Defense Research Institute for analysis, and it was done by Arne Groth in March 1988. So he was looking into this mark, into this knot, to have some kind of conclusion. What is it? What could cause this? And he was looking into this sweater and analyzing it up to the June of the same year. And at the end, he stated, the so-called burn mark does not appear to be a burn mark when I look at it under the microscope, 40 times magnification. The dark color has appeared from fibers of a different and darker type, as if welded to the fibers of the jumper. The fact that the other fibers were both transported and welded to the jumper in this way indicates to a strong electrostatic phenomenon with local spark formation at the relevant place on the body. I mean, yeah, this quote sounds quite complicated and you have to read it again to understand what he's really saying. But in short, he's saying that this burn mark and this knot has appeared in some weird circumstances that could not be described like as normal, if I translated it correctly. But anyways, this report sounds controversial and logically thinking should raise additional questions. However, nobody showed any additional interest in it. So Groth himself, this guy who carried out this analysis, was not interested at all and didn't want to continue the research to find the real answer of what could have caused this burn mark on this sweater, considering all of the background that the person who was wearing this sweater went through. And this is so stupid. Although we can see like the main points that Mr. Groth made in this statement, UFO Sweden still criticized his research because it missed a lot of like scientific approaches and explanations that could have been very useful for the further research. Later on, it was discarded as a solid evidence, which is so sad because I think they should have done more with it. What about other witnesses? What about the neighbors? Because, you know, the more the merrier, the more witnesses, the more credible the case looks. So the UFO Sweden investigators approached all of the neighbors or people living in the surrounding area, but they came up with nothing. Because, you know, that was like the day before New Year's celebrations. Many had already gone to some other places to prepare for the celebrations, or the others said that they were just simply sound asleep, so they don't know what happened outside. But then one person appeared. So a guy named Petri Litbaka, sorry if I mispronounced, at that time he was 19-year-old and he was working as a cook in Scandic Hotel in Fallon. So as many times before, on the December 31st, 1987, which is the day when this sighting happened, he was heading back home towards Soter, where the married couple Karin and Rune lived. Now, it was the time between 1 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. when he was approaching a point that was around 7 kilometers away from the place where the married couple lived. And as he recalled, he saw something, and that was something that he has never seen before while driving this road again and again every day. I saw blue light with hints of red. what the hell can it be? I thought, and stopped the car. At first I thought the light was an airplane, but soon I saw it wasn't moving. I probably stood there looking at the light through the windshield for about 10 minutes. I saw it very clearly. When I got closer to Soter, I could see the light. It got bigger the closer I got. What was that Petri saw on that night? So was it the same thing that was related to the Lagerstrand sighting that caused the life of pain to Karin afterwards? Is it somehow linked? Or maybe we can explain it with something like logic. For example, Petri saw a very bright planet in the sky, because remember, Karin also said that on that night the sky was really clear and you could see all the stars and the moon. One of the brightest celestial bodies, Jupiter, was just above the horizon in the west-northwest at 1 o'clock this night. But there is one fact that makes the planet theory less likely. When Petri was giving his testimony, he said he could see the light remaining over Bisberg even after at Soter around 1:30. So in the opposite direction compared to the first observation. Jupiter would not have been able to be seen in that direction. Now, after discarding this planet option, they started to look into another theory, and this actually sounds quite legit. So this theory is in regards to Bisberg's old mine, which, as it appears, is almost under the married couple's house. So they started to think that, well, maybe this old mine that is located almost under their house could somehow make this phenomena into existence. I don't know. So they were thinking that maybe the gases could have come out from the bottom of the land, and maybe they came in contact with the power lines, and this is why all of this happened in general. All of this was later dismissed by an expert they invited into the investigation. His name was Boris Cerning, and he was a former head of aluminium technology company called Granges. So Cerning has a 50-year mining experience, and he said that he has never heard and would never assume that a gas from a mine could cause a light phenomenon in the sky. The gas itself is heavy and sinks to the bottom, partly because it would be diluted very quickly if we were to leak into the air anyway. So we could put the full stop of the story here. So this is what happened to the couple. This is what we have in regards of the evidence, and this is what we have in regards of the investigation. But I also want to add some other thing. There is evidence that some weird stuff like light phenomena have been spotted in this area already in 1985. So this happened in 1987, but people were speaking about stuff happening in the sky in the area already in 1985. Let me tell you. So actually in January 1985, local newspaper called Dala Demokrat and Falu Kurinen wrote articles about unexplained light phenomena in the sky. What is interesting is that even the authorities became interested into investigating these light phenomena, and I guess they were a little bit scared of the safety, spies in the Swedish airspace, etc., etc. But the investigations led to many, let me tell you, weird and silly explanations. Like, for example, ball lightning. That's one of the typical ones that people use to explain UFOs. Then there was also just simply bright planets. We already had this in the case, like when they were analyzing the testimony of the guy who was driving from work. And as stupid as simply car lights. Yeah, they even consider that. Now, after this fuss in 1985 in the area, this case was dropped and picked up again in 1986 by UFO Sweden. So they even made a whole project around this. So they went out with different technologies, determined to film or photograph any of it and then analyze, but they came up with nothing. Meanwhile, reports of civilians saying that they still now and then see something in the sky were just pouring in. And that was until 1987, when this story of Karin and Rune came out. So there was already something weird happening in the sky in the area. To conclude the story, I just wanted to tell you what really happened at the end with Rune and Karin, like the main characters of today's story. Unfortunately, both of them have already deceased. Rune died in 1995 and Karin lived until 2015. In one of her last interviews that Karin gave in regards to this case, she said, "I don't want to experience it anymore. I felt like I was seeing evil itself." Well, on this note, I'm just gonna put full stop. Let me know what you think about this case. What are your thoughts? What really was happening there with Karin? And let me tell you, I kind of believe that something weird was there. I mean, the previous sightings and also the things that she had with her health. I don't know. I kind of tend to believe her. Yeah, so just tell me, what are your opinions? Also, just reminding, please subscribe if you haven't, because it really helps my channel to grow, especially with the views, because I am struggling with those. That being said, I hope you will enjoy your day. Remember in the previous video I told you that we have spring here in Bergen, Norway. No, it was just for 4 days. We're cold again. We're again in autumn. So I hope you have something better. So yeah, enjoy your day. See you next time.